everyone. It's Friday, April 10th, and this is Adweek Together. My name is Diana Pearl. I'm the Deputy Brands Editor here at Adweek, and I'm joined today by my brands team colleague, Ryan Barwick, and we're going to talk all about the future of travel, which is his beat. Hi, Ryan. How are you? And thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I miss seeing you in the office. This is
I know.
so bizarre that we're doing this from our
I know.
kitchens, or I
Ryan
guess
and I
from
are
your
normally
bedroom.
like seat buddies. We sit right next to each other. So nice to have our a virtual, hangout if we can't hang out in person.
Yeah, no, it's
Um,
good. It's good to see you.
Yeah. And then just as a reminder to the audience, I will be keeping my eye on LinkedIn. So if you have any questions for Ryan that you'd like me to ask, please feel free to send them through. So today we're talking about travel, and let's get started with airlines because that has definitely been one of the buzziest industries throughout everything happening with coronavirus. They've been very hard hit. Flights have been cut. There's been a lot of revenue lost, obviously, and there's just a ton happening. And they've gotten a lot of attention because of it. So I'd love to hear, Ryan, what sort of changes have airlines made, and how is this impacting the airline industry?
Yeah, it's not so much, and we can talk about the marketing aspect of it later. But it's not so much that the changes airlines have made, but it's that the federal government and state regulators are literally telling Americans not to travel, and obviously that has a major impact on some of these airlines. The TSA released some of their numbers, and they've seen. People passing through TSA checkpoints has fallen 95%. There's
Crazy.
95% less people in these airports getting on these planes. So the travel industry, overall, has absolutely taken it on the chin right now. It's so right now in the process of kind of where we are. The airlines in the $2 trillion stimulus coronavirus relief bill, there is earmarked money, grants, half loans for these airlines. And these airlines will be able to now, and now we're going through the process of applying to the Treasury Department saying, hey, we are going to take some loans, we're going to take some grants. And we will probably find out sometime this weekend what that actually looks like. We don't know how much, we don't know what these airlines are going to be trading for this money. If they accept some money, there are certain things they have to agree to, like they can't have any layoffs. They have to keep flying some very specific routes. And I'm trying to think, and it's also possible that the government could actually take equity in the airlines, which is super unique and a little contentious. So there's kind of a back and forth going on right now. We don't exactly know what's going to happen. Kind of funny, this morning, President Trump tweeted that he didn't like that the airlines had given $45 billion to Wall Street. But his exact words were, "It is what it is." So it's the president saying that. So there's probably going to be a deal by this weekend. And, obviously I'll be paying attention to that.
Yeah, definitely. It's super interesting. And I'd love to go back and hear a little bit more about, if the government is taking equity in airlines, what is sort of the situation that would have to arise for that to happen? It would have to be the airlines taking these grants. And then what would that look like? Do we have any idea? Is there precedent for this? Have we seen something like this before?
Yeah, so there is precedent for this after 9/11. Obviously, that was an event. That's nothing like the coronavirus where there's no end date on it. But the airline industry was really hit, and they were given a relief package. And I believe I have the figure up here somewhere that specific 9/11 package was way smaller than what we're seeing for 9/11. I can't think of the exact figure here. So there is some precedent for the government giving these airlines loans and then making a profit off of it a little bit later down the road. As of now, we don't know how much the government is actually how involved the government's going to be in the airlines. It's about, I think, 25 billion in grants, 25 billion in loans. Some of that is supposed to be allocated just for payroll.
Mm.
So yeah, we'll see what happens. It's definitely super interesting.
Yeah. And you mentioned that if the airlines do accept this money, there are strings attached. And one of those strings is agreeing not to have layoffs until I believe that the month is September. I don't remember the
Yeah,
exact date,
September
but
30th.
Yes, September 30th. So what would that look like? Do you think that layoffs are sort of inevitable? You think about the fact that there are all these pilots, all these flight attendants, and as airlines have, and even like gate agents, and as airlines have really slashed the number of flights they're doing, there's no need for so many of these people. Do you think that layoffs are sort of inevitable? The industry obviously is facing a huge crisis with no sort of end date in sight.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, the headline here, and this is a story I wrote last week, that layoffs may be inevitable. From everyone I've talked to, we're just going to see the travel industry really contract. It's going to shrink. People aren't going to be flying. There are estimates as how long will it take before we get back to pre-coronavirus? And some of those estimates are 2 years. So the industry is going to be a lot smaller. There might not be as many planes in the sky. There may not be as many people on those planes. So if you don't have to fly as much, you don't need the staff. So even and I guess it would be a good thing for these airlines not to have layoffs, at least until September 30th. But even after that, there may still be some layoffs. Hopefully, at the end of this, these airlines can keep these people on the payroll for as long as possible. And I guess that's kind of the cloud around this. We just don't know how long this will last. Travel could, President Trump is hoping to reopen the economy possibly by May 1st. Health experts disagree with that, but we just don't know when travel is going to return at all.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of shifting gears a little bit, I'd love to hear, how is this impacting the hotel industry? If people aren't traveling, they're not staying in hotels. How are they weathering this crisis? And are there any ways for hotels to keep making money, even given what's happening right now? Maybe they're not, renting out rooms, but maybe they have a restaurant where they can do takeout and delivery. As I've seen a lot of restaurants here in New York do. Is that something that hotels are doing, or are they sort of just out of luck?
Yeah, I haven't seen so much from the takeout. I know Marriott and Hilton specifically have kind of made it a point to donate their rooms to frontline healthcare workers. Or Hilton, actually, I believe they set aside $10 million worth of rooms. Not sure how many rooms that actually works out to in some hot zones. So these hotels are trying to donate. They're trying to keep the lights on. Obviously, if healthcare workers are staying there, that means the hotels are going to have some of their crews working, in the lobbies, cleaning, that sort of thing. The hotels are still able to get some money from the $2 trillion stimulus package, federal relief, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean, these businesses are really hurting. There's no way to sugarcoat that, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And then another part of the travel industry that's been hard hit are cruise lines. And for now, they've completely shuttered operations, at least in the US. Something that I've seen a lot of chatter about is, are cruises going to see any of this bailout money? Especially because a lot of them are not headquartered or incorporated, correct me if I'm wrong, in the US. They're in different ports and different locations. What's sort of going to be the impact on that? But we've also seen President Trump say that we'll take care of the cruise lines. What do you think the future is for that industry?
Yeah, he said that, but then they weren't included in the actual relief. What's really interesting, kind of like you said, a lot of these businesses are headquartered in Miami, Florida, in the United States. But then if you actually look pretty closely, it's not an American flag on top of a lot of these ships. It was in the New York Times, but a lot of times it's Bermuda or the Bahamas. They don't pay a ton of income taxes. So the argument would be, why should we give them bailout money if they're not paying taxes or they're not keeping their business in the United States? Carnival and Royal Caribbean, and actually most of the major cruise lines, set a deadline of April 11th. This was back in March, saying we're going to shut everything down until April 11th. A lot of these brands were really hesitant. They weren't canceling a lot of cruises, basically up until the wire. And actually, the week before this happened, I wrote a story about some people that were actually going on their cruises, which is kind of fascinating looking back on it.
Yeah.
But so that has happened. And then just recently, we've seen Royal Caribbean and Carnival coming out with two announcements. Carnival saying they're going to extend their hold on everything till May 11th, and Royal Caribbean saying they're going to push everything back until May 12th. So kind of pushing that date even further into May. And they could open everything up before then. They could just move that date back. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we actually have a question from LinkedIn from Kate. She said, I would love to hear your thoughts on the impact of COVID-19 on the travel industry by demographic group or early growth opportunities. For instance, millennial travel could recover much faster than boomer travel. Are cruises over and regional domestic getaways where it's at? Ryan, curious for your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a really great question. I'm curious. A lot of airlines were really targeting Gen Z travelers. Airlines specifically, we're targeting them. United actually ran a couple campaigns on Instagram saying, "Hey, take these shots, send them to your friends. We want to be the airline to get you to these destinations." Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious if prices have absolutely dropped. They've fallen through the roof. So I'm curious if these younger demographics are going to take advantage of that. Maybe they feel a little bit more invincible to kind of what's going around. And when things start to creak open, they might be those first couple travelers. But definitely these airlines and hotels and everyone has been kind of coveting these younger travelers to incorporate them, to make them loyalty members. So I would be really curious to see if maybe through marketing, that's who they'll focus their resources on. That's just a guess. Who knows? These aren't traditionally huge spenders usually when they're traveling.
Yeah, definitely. And then something kind of going off of that I'm curious about. Even after this is coming to a close and travel is opening up again and we're getting directives from the government that it's okay to get back on planes, it's okay to visit new places again. Obviously, I do think there's going to be some sort of consumer hesitation, and the industry is going to have to do a lot of work to make people feel comfortable flying again. How do you think that airlines, hotels, cruises can go about that and make people feel comfortable experiencing their services and products again?
Yeah, I think it's going to be probably the focus of a lot of their marketing. I think you're going to see a lot of images of, the mechanics on the runway, the guys with the sticks kind of waving the airplane to come down. You're going to see a lot of flight attendants, basically to show the community of these airlines and how, putting the actual people as forward as possible to show that, hey, we're a community, we're all in this together. Yeah, exactly, right here. You can see Southwest's what they've done, and a lot of these airlines are actually flying a lot of healthcare workers right now. They're trying to make the point that they are an essential service. They are carrying medical supplies, they're carrying doctors to hot zones. I wouldn't be shocked if they include some of this in their marketing, kind of what they've been able to do, even though the travel industry has, almost fallen apart. And then I guess the inverse of this is kind of what we're seeing now. Obviously, a lot of these budgets have been slashed a little bit. Travel spending is really low right now. But you'll see an emphasis in Delta Airlines. They've been running not a ton, but even in the newsletters that they're sending to their members, there's a real focus on like cleaning the cabin and kind of what they're doing. They're fogging everything. Everything's being sanitized to the 10th degree. I'm curious if we see these practices kind of in the future. Maybe hand sanitizer, like those eye masks, are going to be given to everyone. Who knows? But I could definitely see that airlines have claimed that they're going to continue these practices, these cleaning practices, into the future.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think planes will be very clean and disinfected going forward. Kind of going off of the airlines discussion, one thing that I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about is sustainability initiatives. That's been a huge priority for airlines and across the travel industry in 2020 so far, and throughout 2019 as well, things like carbon offsetting and use of single-use plastics. And a lot of these big companies have made big promises, specifically centered around what they're going to do in 2020. But obviously making those promises costs money, and making these changes costs money. And now airlines and hotels really don't have a lot of cash on hand. They don't really even have the cash to pay all of their employees. How do you think that this is going to impact those sustainability initiatives, and what do you think that the impact will be felt for years to come? Is this, setting these brands really behind on things that they had originally planned to do?
Yeah, I'm working on a story that should run next week that kind of focus on this. Like you were saying, 2019 was a year that a lot of brands made promises regarding their sustainability practices. Marriott saying we're going to get rid of single-use toiletries by 2020. JetBlue making the announcement that they want to be a carbon neutral airline, meaning they're going to offset every flight. Just a couple of people I've spoken with have made really smart choices that you know disregarding whatever bailout they get, there's not going to be an airline to offset if these airlines aren't given the funds to keep running. So obviously they have to put the payroll priority first. They need to prove that they're able to exist before they can accomplish some of these more ambitious plans. I'm not going to say that they're on the back burner now, but we just don't know to what extent they're going to be able to accomplish these. Who knows though? Maybe if every Marriott is closed, maybe it's easier to change everything. Maybe it's easier to install these kind of things.
Yeah.
We're not sure, but unfortunately, when things are this dire, and I hate saying this, but it often feels like some of the more sustainable solutions are kind of the first to go because it can be more expensive.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And then we have another question from LinkedIn from Kent, and he is wondering how will the drop in travel impact those industries that support, food service, fuel. There's so many industries that are connected with travel. You even think about restaurants. If people, I think about New York City. Obviously, restaurants here are closed, but if people are nervous to travel even after those restaurants open back up, will those restaurants see a decline? How is this just going to have a greater impact on industries at large?
Yeah, I mean, totally. A large part of tourism are the restaurants, right? That are in time. I mean, okay, Times Square is not a good example, but in any downtown in the country, and yeah, everyone's going to be affected. There are ripples. I mean, we've already seen 6 million Americans are filed for unemployment. Again, the real question comes back to how long will it take before everything rebounds? If restaurants and such are able to open and recover before even airlines, I'm sure that might inspire more people to spend their discretionary income and to book a flight and to spend a weekend at a resort. My guess is that we're going to see domestic travel probably pick up before business and international. Obviously, people are going to get antsy and they're going to want to visit family. They're going to want to get out of the state, but they might not make that big trip, to Mumbai or Beijing or even Paris or Italy. We really don't know even the full extent of how, these major European capitals are going to be affected. We don't know what tourism is going to look like to Italy as we're going into the summer. This is supposed to be the peak time for those cities. And we don't know the fallout yet of how these cities are going to be affected.
For sure. And then kind of going off of that, to sort of start to wrap up our conversation, I'd love to hear, what do you think really is the future of the travel industry here in the short term and the long term? Do you think we're going to see long-term damage? Do you think recovery will be pretty immediate? Because there is going to be this, I mean, I know I personally can't wait to travel again. I can't wait to get back on a plane once it's okay. It's for a lot of people, it's a big part of their lives and they're feeling eager. I mean, I've even seen some of these LinkedIn comments of people saying, I'm already scouting trips and thinking about what the future holds. And I think for a lot of people, it's something to hope for and hang on to in these tough times. So do you think we'll see an immediate recovery? How can airlines and hotels and cruises sort of start to rebuild?
Yeah, I don't want to be the Grim Reaper here. Obviously, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. But a lot of the times travel is kind of the canary in the coal mine as far as, it's discretionary income. It's not essential even though I might feel that way, it's not essential for me to go to Florida in the summer and visit my family and sit by the beach, right? A lot of people probably feel the same way. So we're going to see the travel industry in those industries that depend on this discretionary income to maybe lag when everything starts rebounding. there was a research paper done yesterday. I believe it was Atmosphere Research. They're an airline consulting firm. They predicted that 6 to 9 months are when you'll see what they call tiptoe travelers, the people that start kind of inching towards wanting to travel, like booking those domestic flights, or the really confident people that, that they have expendable income, they weren't as affected, they're going to do their vacations. And then outside of that, you have 12 to 18 months where things begin to normalize, not quite yet normal, but it begins to climb. And then around, I believe it was 12 months in total is when you get back to, I guess, pre-coronavirus, and then 24 months until you see the actual growth of where we were and where everyone was headed.
Yeah.
24 months is a long time, and a lot can happen between now and then, but that's a far way away. So unfortunately, I do think these industries are going to be impacted for a while.
Yeah, definitely. It's crazy how things can just change so quickly, and something can really set an industry back like this. But
that being
Ryan,
said, though, sorry.
No, provide some hope. It sounded like you were going to provide some hope. So
that being said, I, like everyone else, like if you look at some resorts right now in the Caribbean and in Mexico, like prices are pretty low, and they're lower in obviously the off season right now than they would be in January and February. But I, like everyone else, have looked, and there are some deals out there, and I don't know what the future is going to look like in September, but if I can lay on a beach in Mexico for like pennies, and I guess I'm part of the Gen Z traveler, I will do that. So, we'll see. We'll see. I'm definitely traveling with insurance, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's wise. We've all learned the importance now of travel insurance. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us and for your insights. Great to learn more about what's happening in travel right now. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's good to see you.
You too. And then everyone at home, join us Monday at noon Eastern Time when our executive editor, Stephanie Patrick, will interview Salesforce's CMO, Stephanie Buscemi, to get some best practices and tips for all brand managers. And we'll close out this week with a look at the Adweek staff working together while still working from home. Have a good weekend, everyone.
From wherever we are
to everywhere you are,
we're Adweek together.
Bringing you news, insights,
tips,
guidance,
and community.
From Minneapolis, Minnesota,
to Portland, Oregon,
to Austin, Texas,
to Cleveland, Ohio,
from Connecticut
to New Jersey,
from sunny Florida
to right here in New York City.
The Adweek team is here for you.
Together.